Hey viewers, I was thinking about Starfield while taking a crap yesterday, and I came up with a few extremely basic and obvious ideas for improving its handcrafted points of interest. Or perhaps I should say points of disinterest. According to the Starfield database at inara.cz, Starfield has 118 locations that can appear on any planet, 101 locations that are always in the same place, and 24 temples. Adding it all together, that makes 243 locations in Starfield, assuming this wiki has a complete list. To compare, Vanilla Skyrim has 343 locations. Vanilla Fallout 4 has 325. That means Starfield has less content than 8 and 12-year-old games that take place on very tiny maps, and somehow Bethesda thought that would be enough for a game with over 1,000 planets. Worse still, these 100-something Radiant locations have no worthwhile stories to tell, and they aren't part of an interconnected world like all of Bethesda's earlier games. Many people argue that using procedural generation to create an infinite number of POIs would be the solution to Starfield's exploration problems, and I agree to some extent. While dungeons would still be generic, disconnected islands of content, if they were procedurally generated, they'd at the very least all be somewhat unique. However, this is Bethesda we're talking about. Making guns reload properly is a challenge for these guys. Just thinking about procedural dungeons makes me imagine nonsensical room layouts, hallways and doors leading into the void, bosses not spawning in. There's no end to the ways this idea could go wrong. Thus, on one hand, I'm kind of happy that Bethesda didn't add procedurally generated dungeons to Starfield, but on the other hand, I'm kind of insulted that they didn't even try. In any case, this video isn't going to be about procedural generation. These ideas I came up with on the toilet are even simpler than that. This is stuff they could have done in a few weeks, with no additional art assets, and not much programming either. My first idea would be just add more locations. 50 or 100 extra POIs, cobbled together using the same building kits as the ones already in the game, would go a long way towards adding enough variety to satisfy players. It would delay the inevitable wait, haven't I been here already thought that's gone through the mind of every single person who's played Starfield for more than a few hours. I don't know how long it takes for level designers to make dungeons in Starfield, but I remember from reading about the making of Oblivion that one level designer was able to make 20 dungeons in 2 weeks. According to the credits, Starfield had at least a dozen level designers, and that's not counting any outsourced staff that might also have been able to help. If those dozen people had been tasked with cranking out locations at only 1/4 the rate of that sole Oblivion level designer during Starfield's delay period, that's 10 months, they could have added over 1,000 new POIs to this game. Even if they were only working at 1/10 the speed, they could have added hundreds of locations. Obviously, there are bottlenecks in the creative process. Asset kits have to be more or less finished by 3D artists before level designers can start their work, but still, the level design team had years. If you look at some metrics like number of creatures or voice lines, Starfield has well over twice the amount of content as any other BGS game, which is exactly what you would expect for such a long development time. So why is there so little content when it comes to exploration? How did the main selling point of the game, 1,000 planets all open for us to explore, end up so awful? It's an open question for now, but I'm certain over the coming months and years we'll learn more about Starfield's troubled development. In any case, that's my first suggestion, just add more locations to the pool. Very simple. My second idea is to give each generated location a random name. Instead of calling it Industrial Outpost, call it Vanadium Processing Center. Don't call it Abandoned Hangar, call it Hangar Delta Zeta 14, I don't know. Giving each POI a unique name wouldn't automatically make them interesting, but it would definitely be a start. The Elder Scrolls Daggerfall implemented this feature in 1996. Every dungeon and tavern has a random name. Every NPC has a random name too. Daggerfall also has procedurally generated dungeons. Holy shit, Bethesda, you're getting your ass kicked by a quarter-century-old MS-DOS game. It might be time to pack it in. Here's another idea which would have been really smart. Whenever the player visits a point of interest, add it to a list of places that will never spawn again until the game has run out of unvisited locations. If Bethesda had implemented this one simple idea, a significant number of players never would have realized that locations can repeat. I can't believe this isn't in the game. Skyrim already has this feature with its Radiant quests. You always get sent to an uncleared dungeon, and it takes a while for dungeons to become uncleared again, so you never get sent to the same place twice in a row. Why doesn't Starfield have the same thing, but better? It's unbelievably stupid. My next idea comes from my limited experience with Skyrim's creation kit. In the editor window, when placing down objects, you can flag them as owned or flag them not to respawn, and several other things. Why not add a little slider in there that determines an object's chance to spawn? Then, even if dungeon layouts are the exact same, maybe one time you enter a dungeon there's a pencil case sitting on a table, but the next time around it's not there because it only has a 30% chance of spawning. Or maybe a minefield won't have mines spawn in the exact same place, and if you're really lucky, there could be no mines at all. Of course, there are some stacked physics objects where this could be a problem. Maybe those should be exempt from this chance-based system, or maybe those objects could be parented to each other so they either all spawn in or none of them do. There are mods for the Fallout games that randomly remove loot from the world, and they work great. Maybe Bethesda should have taken a hint from their modding community for once. Here's some more ideas I'll throw at the wall. Maybe interiors could have blocked off paths that are randomly chosen to be sealed or unsealed. As long as nothing critical is accidentally locked off in the sealed portion of a dungeon, this is an easy way to add some variety. Lighting could be randomized too. Lights could have a small chance of being disabled, making the dungeon less bright than normal. Ambient coloring could be randomized as well. And if Starfield uses similar modular building kits as Fallout 4, there's already multiple different texture variants for every type of wall, ceiling, and floor. Why not randomly pick one variant each time a dungeon loads? How is none of this in the game? What the hell was Bethesda doing for the past 8 years? I don't know. But I do know that Starfield's Radiant universe is a complete disaster. If Bethesda had implemented all of these incredibly simple ideas, the disaster would have been mitigated somewhat. Defenders of Starfield would have a lot more ammunition. They'd be able to point out that technically every dungeon is different from the last, despite layouts always being the same. Starfield ultimately would be in a much better place review score-wise right now, but Bethesda's incompetence screwed them once again, and now they have to deal with the consequences. It will be interesting to see whether they can manage to positively shift public perception of Starfield over the next few months and years. It'll be an uphill battle for them, that's for sure. In semi-related news, I've started working on a video examining Starfield's world building, and I hope to have that out sometime next year. I want to explore the game thoroughly, do every single quest, read every book, and really give the game a fair shake. I try to be a perfectionist. Whenever I miss something or get one little detail wrong, I'm always kicking myself. I'll take my time and avoid that this time around, so don't ask for an ETA. Anyways, that's all folks. Toodles!